Helldivers 2 has lost 90% of its players. Uh-oh.
Let's talk about Helldivers 2 and the current state of this live service. The game launched to huge success, definitely Sony's most successful live service that they themselves have kind of published. Obviously, Bungie is now part of PlayStation, but Bungie was not a PlayStation entity before its acquisition. So Helldivers 2 represented a big deal for Sony and PlayStation, and currently the game, it's lost a significant portion of the player base, and that's not to say that this game is like tanking and, that it's going to fail or anything. But look.
How many people are playing it at this very moment? And this is only on PC, obviously. 40,000 people playing. Okay.
At numbers, it has lost roughly 90% of its player base, and there are questions as to whether this is a live service that can maintain itself for the long-term future. Now, looking at the numbers, like the fact that it's still getting, roughly 45,000 players every day.
I think that a lot of people were way too optimistic about this game whenever it came out. Like, I remember whenever it came out, I was never, like, super appealed. Like, it was not like, super appealing to me. I like the game. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the game. But, like, I couldn't really see this game having, like, any sort of, like, real long-term success because there's not really any progressions. There's nothing you really do, right? You just kind of, like, go and do the same thing over and over again. Like, it's repetitive. Yeah, I think it's repetitive.
That's still, like, not bad at all. Obviously, a far cry from its initial all-time peak, 458.
And this is also not a failure. Like, and if you look at, for example, look at Elden Ring, or if you look at Pal World, or any of these other games, any game that comes out is going to have popularity for a while, and then people do all of this stuff in the game, and then it's not as popular anymore. Look at New World, right? That's just the way any game goes. This is the natural life cycle of a product.
8,208 players, but this is by no means doom and gloom. But at the same time, a live service, the goal is usually to maintain a certain player base and see that kind of become a steady pace of players that eventually also kind of increases over time. There should be like an ebb and flow. When a live service starts to see a consistent trend of kind of the player base diminishing, there are some potential concerns as to whether it can maintain itself for not just months on end, but years on end. And so
a really good parallel to this is Path of Exile, and looking at how much more successful Path of Exile is, because PoE has the same type of massive drop-off, but the difference is that people come back into the next season. They come back for the next league. So the problem with Helldivers or something like that is that, or even Diablo 4 has been successful. Like, and I know people might be, oh, I hate Diablo 4. Diablo 4 is so bad. Look at this. The game has retained a tremendously large amount of people into this last season. This season, like season 4 of Diablo 4, was so much of a massive success compared to the previous seasons. It is insane. Massive fucking success. And I'm not saying if you didn't like it, that's fine. But compared to the other ones, it's a lot better. It's like a 2 or a 3x. So that's what a healthy, like I would say that Diablo 4, if they continue this trend, will be a healthy live service game.
Questions are being raised about that. You look at something like, Destiny 2, which is one of the most successful live services out there, and in many cases sort of the blueprint of what a live service looter shooter should be. You can see right here that it started at a peak of 292,000 players, and you can see how that's fluctuated up and down. But aside from like some really major dips here and there, like this recent dip into the 30,000s, you can see there's this nice ebb and flow that highlights that people are still coming back to this game. And in the last 30 days,
well, the game is falling off though. Like, and the thing is that this is what happens with almost any live service game. If you look at Destiny 2, not 21. If you look at it like really, really long term, right? All the way. Oh, actually, you know what? No, I'm wrong. That's not true. I thought that it was falling off because I was looking at the numbers that he was showing, and the numbers looked like they were indicating a like these numbers were lower than the middle numbers in the bottom, but that's actually not true. Yeah, I'm wrong.
With the launch of the final
Yeah.
shape, I mean, that player base has utterly exploded. I believe I mean, we're seeing peak players almost
Yeah.
peak again. The last time we saw it peak was all the way back in February of 2000 or sorry, was it January? No, February of 2023 at 316, over 316,000. We almost reached that number again with the launch of the latest expansion. So that highlights just this level of consistency that showcases a lot.
Well, the game is clearly healthy, right? It's a clearly healthy game because people come back for new updates. I think that's what really determines whether a live service game is healthy or not, is when the updates actually retain the player base. Like PoE, you can bring the players back. Like Destiny 2 clearly is bringing the players back. And Helldivers, I don't know. They've done that with this DLC. Yeah, look at New World. New World does an update, and nobody even knows it. This is only Steam, too? Yeah, you're right. Like, and by the way, this is a slice, so it's a sample size. It's not indicative of the entire population of the game.
Live service that is alive and well and healthy, and that people will go back to if the content additions are substantial, and people have been really happy with how the final shape turned out. So I guess the question is, what does the future hold for Helldivers 2? Because this is a game that has released consistent updates, but it feels like those updates, in terms of bringing players back in a significant way, hasn't moved the needle by a whole lot. And news outlet Forbes highlights here this article from Paul Tassi, some statistics that are worth looking at about the game, like the fact that it is routinely outside the top 10 list and is number 58 in top sellers on the service, specifically referring to Steam, which is what we have a lot of data on. And then when it comes to the game being streamed, the most viewed Twitch stream of the game at this moment has 56 viewers. The
Jesus, I remember, bro, I had like almost 30K people watching this shit, and I was
kind of
playing
social
it
media and content creation
at like 3 a.m. Nah, bro, like there's no way, right? There's no way. 2K viewers. One guy has 2K viewers. And this is also, I believe this individual is a, what do you call it? They're like a variety streamer. But other than that, 261 viewers. Yeah, they're a big YouTuber, right? So it's not like this audience is native to Helldivers, is what I'm saying, right? Wow. I didn't know it was that bad. That's incredible.
Kind of data also matters too, because that highlights how much people are interacting with the game and how much it's drawing eyes to this day, and those numbers are diminishing as well. Not to mention that there are some complaints surrounding the current state of the game. Again, it's not like the game is an utter failure or anything, or crashing and burning.
No, it's
but
fine.
People do wish for certain things to improve. Players most recently have been complaining that higher levels were too punishing to be fun, but after a large-scale buff patch, it barely moved a needle. Not to mention...
Look, the game was a cultural phenomenon. A lot of people got excited about it. People tried it out because, like, everybody was talking about it. And a lot of those people quit the game because it's like, okay, well, we did that. I've been there. I did that. Now what? That's the same as anything else. It's just like Pal World. Pal World is different. Let me explain why Pal World is different. Pal World is a game with a finite amount of content that was designed to be completed. Helldivers 2 is a game that is continuously adding and updating new content that is a live service game that relies on people continuously playing. These are not the same business models. So you shouldn't expect a game like Pal World to perform the same way. But you're right about both of them being phenomenons and like culturally relevant in like the similar way. You're right about that. It's just not about the trend in like the player base.
That, like I said, certain updates that feel pretty major have not caused a huge resurgence of players. There's been no significant surge other than a brief spike when a mass automaton invasion happened, but interest fell sharply after a week, and since then the game has continued to shed players quickly. And this is a live service. That's the main thing. If this were like a single-player experience or
like
even a multiplayer experience that has sort of a
Enshrouded.
beginning, middle, and end and isn't meant to be played for years on end, then these statistics would be fairly normal. But
they are.
This is a game that is getting consistent updates, that a recurrent amount of money is being spent on by Sony and by Arrowhead.
And here's another game, right, to put this into perspective. So if you look at this game right here, Lost Ark, they were doing apology live streams like here. Like, that's bad, bro. That's really bad. So imagine where we're at right here. Like, I guess, so what's this? I guess they banned a bunch of bots. Jesus. 24,000 people playing the game. This game had 1.3 million people playing. Over 500,000 people, I believe that was the number, it could have been 300, paid extra money to play 3 days early. And now it's at 20,000. Lost Ark has fallen off. They have. And they deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. They should have just had me fix the game. I had all the solutions. They just didn't want to listen.
And so requires a certain consistent amount of financial return every quarter and whatnot. And there's the question of, will this game have enough financial returns to justify its maintenance over the long term? As for why people are potentially dropping out of this game currently, well, Paul Tassi, again, he's the one who's been kind of covering this a lot. And looking at some of the comments, it's interesting to see what people are saying. Some people are theorizing that maybe Sony forcing the whole linking to a PlayStation account, that whole debacle that spread far and wide, that they eventually had to backpedal on, that might have contributed to a lot of players deciding to leave. Now, Paul Tassi and...
No, Paul's right. That had nothing to do with it. And the graph proves it. This is just an internet user trying to make it seem like they have an impact. No, it did not have an impact. In fact, it got more people to play. I'll show you. Where is it? Oops, excuse me. Let me go back to here. Account linking shenanigans. It went up after this. It was going down. It went back up and it held this player base. And then it went back down. Like, what is this? Like 2 weeks later? A week later? No, it had nothing to do with that. Just look at the numbers.
Looking at Steam charts, it is highlighted that when you look at the day in which this whole debacle happened back in May of 2024, looking at the Steam data there, you can see that it didn't really impact the game a whole lot. It wasn't like we saw.
It not only did it not impact the game, but I would argue that it was probably beneficial for the game overall. If you could live in two alternate universes where Helldivers 2 had this happen and Helldivers 2 didn't have this happen, I think the universe where it didn't have it happen, the player base would be even lower than it is now. Because it got people talking about it again. And it got everybody talking about it again. Bad publicity is good publicity? Well, the problem is that the bad publicity for the game was resolved.
Huge crash of players around that period. You can see that the decline has been steady all throughout this controversial time period for the game. It definitely damaged the optics surrounding.
It wasn't resolved? Yeah, it was. How was it not resolved? A lot of countries can't play anymore? That's not true. If you bought the game in those countries, you can still play the game. They're just not selling it there anymore. Which is totally fine. You can't buy it. Yeah, that's not a problem. Do you think that people are not playing the game because some people in some random country can't buy it? No, that's not true. Okay, so you're playing semantics? What, are y'all retarded? Let me explain this very quickly. So when Helldivers 2 had the controversy, and it happened, Sony decided to force people to use a PlayStation account. At which point, Sony pulled back this restriction and decided not to do it. At the same time, Sony ceased selling Helldivers 2 in over, I think, 100 countries. A huge amount of countries could no longer purchase Helldivers 2. The people who had purchased it in those countries prior to that period of time were still able, and at this point in time now are still able to purchase to play Helldivers 2. So if you live in one of those countries and you purchase the game, you can still play the game. They can't. They can't play the game. Prove it. I want proof that you paid for a game, you bought the game, and now you can't play the game. Prove it. I want to see it right now. A lot of people refunded from those regions so they can no longer play it. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you refund a game. Imagine this, you live in a country where it's banned, you bought the game first because you have a better job than your friends, now your friends can no longer buy it, so you're stuck playing it by yourself. This is enough reason for me to consider it an ongoing issue. I understand that's what some people think about it, but I don't think that was a massive impact. I just don't think so. Maybe you're right. Maybe it had an impact, but I don't think it was a big one, to be honest with you. I really just don't think so. I think the truth is that you remember whenever, like, the first month of Helldivers 2 coming out, the game, everybody was talking about the game. Everybody was tweeting about the game. People were super excited about the game. Nobody is doing that anymore. The reason why is because the memes and everything have run its course. Everything's already happened. This is already done. It's outside of the scope of the public attention. It's done. It's no content. Yeah, that's it. I would argue that all the people that were talking about it during that big controversy probably got more people to look at the game and got people to come back to it or play it again than they would have already. I think those people were already going to leave. If anything, it kept them engaged a little bit longer. It's experience out of words buff. Yeah, it's not true. You can still play it if you bought it, but 180 countries of people, over 3 billion, cannot join the game or their friends who already bought it. Yeah, that's definitely bad, but I don't think that's the reason why it's failing. I just don't. It was already losing its player base by tens of thousands. The account linking had no effect on player retention. Yeah, it just didn't. Like, you just look at the graph, it didn't happen.
The title, but they, I guess, backpedaled on it quickly enough, though there are still restrictions when it comes to which countries can access the game. But in terms of a pure PR perspective, they did do enough damage control where this didn't impact the game's numbers tremendously. Others are saying that in terms of the kinds of activity.
Oh, and the Discord thing, I understand about that. So basically, there's some weird freaks that are Discord moderators of Helldivers. I think that the amount of people that are quitting the game or not playing the game because a few community managers are furries, there are maybe a dozen of them. This is completely inconsequential, and it has no real bearing on whether people are going to play the game or not. Nobody really cares about this. People are not going to choose to not do something. She's still a mod, which is weird, but that's a small issue. It is weird. Yeah, absolutely. And it does make me question the development teams, they're like, are you guys, like, what's wrong with you guys? You're letting this weird freak, use your game as a platform to be weird. Like, what is this? But that's what happens.
And continue partaking with the game is starting to get a little stale after all these months. So somebody here said, I mean, I love the game, but it's still fighting bots and bugs on nearly the same planets with slightly different guns. I love the game, but for a live service, it's too shallow. Once I maxed out every ship upgrade, I had nothing to work towards. And that's kind of the general feedback I'm seeing. It's like
that's the way that I felt about the game the whole time. I loved the aesthetic of the game. I thought the game was great, but I just didn't feel any compelling reason to play it. Is that weird? I don't know, but that's how I feel.
An incredible foundation here. It just, as a live service, it needs to be more developed. It just needs significant more content additions. And, it's been getting some cool content here and there, but we're not talking about, like, expansion scale levels of content and campaign experiences and modes and stuff like that. And so I'm curious as to what's being worked on behind the scenes for Helldivers 2 to maintain its live service. I really do think that Helldivers 2 does need, like, an expansion level of an update. It's why Warframe, for example, has continued to rise.
Well, Warframe has power progression and gear progression, so I don't think Warframe is the same thing. Like, Helldivers is very unique in the fact that you don't level up and become more powerful. It's not like your gun at level 1 does 10 damage, and your gun at level 2 does 20 damage, and by level 20 it does 200 damage. That's not really how it works.
In its status and player base numbers, every time they release a major content for Warframe, it feels like they basically add a whole new game mode. It's just the additions are so substantial that it feels like a completely fresh game all over again. It's like a fresh new addition on top of all of the good things that came before. And I think if Helldivers 2 can do that, I think there's still a chance for this game to come back, because, again, the foundations are solid enough that if you give players a reason to come back to this, they will. It's also worth noting,
it's too one-dimensional. There's no progression system. No, it's not going to come back. Like, it was a great aesthetic. It was really fun to play. The memes were awesome, but it's over. Like, you have, like, they would have to reinvent the game. And that's not bad. Like, by the way, it's not bad. Like, they made a great game. It was a great game. Like, there's nothing like, what? It's awesome. So, what's the problem?
That it takes a lot to make expansion levels of content additions, especially when you weren't expecting that your game would reach a level where it might require that, because the player base turned out to be significantly larger than you ever anticipated as a development studio. You know, we've seen reports of Arrowhead saying that their plans have significantly shifted after seeing how successful this game became. And so the team is likely grown, and there's likely just a lot more. There are likely much bigger plans for this game than there were before. And hopefully, once they get into the rhythm of that, we'll see a consistent cadence of substantial content releases that makes the game consistently feel fresh over the long term. And so,
I don't really see that happening, to be honest. I think that they have to reinvent the way the game, and also, like, a game with no progression system has a lifespan. People will play the gameplay and they will enjoy it for a while, and then they'll get tired of it because they've already done it. That's just how it is.
So I don't know. I'm personally not too worried about the future of this game, unless we start to see nothing come out for this game, or nothing refreshing enough for this game to be able to really recover from what is currently a pretty consistent dip in players and a pretty consistent decline. But this is far from hopeless when it comes to it making a comeback. I really want this game to continue its success.
I just think that people are really downplaying the cultural impact that Helldivers had. Like, everybody on social media was talking about this game, was thinking about this game. People knew this game. That's a type of marketing that you can't pay for it. You can't just make that happen. That has to happen organically on its own. They can't recapture that lightning in a bottle again, because it's a one-time only thing. And that's not bad.
That's because I think it's a model, both in terms of its consumer friendliness, aside from the whole, PlayStation
it's like Among
Network
Us. Yeah,
linking
Among Us, the same
situation.
Yeah.
And just what a passion project this feels like, and just how deserved this game is in its success. I really don't want this to become an example of failure. I want this to become an example of, like, what can happen when you don't try to just copy others and kind of really have unique ideas and take a genre and kind of do your own thing with it. Instead of chasing trends, you kind of do have your own unique take on it, on top of the fact that you monetize it in a way that feels ethical, the cheaper price point for this.
Yeah, no, the game is ethical in a big way. Hype and community was a big driver for me and people I know. I know once the drama broke, we lost the thing. I feel like the drama emphasized the hype in the community way more than it played it down. I feel like the community was super positive and super happy at the end of it. That's just me, right? The drama ruined the game for me. I didn't feel that way at all. Wrong? People quit after the drama? You can say that people quit after the drama, but that's not what the data reflects. It's just not. It was already going down massively. That's it. That was not the reason. Or at least the data does not reflect that. And in fact, it reflects the opposite. It was because the game was getting boring and things were played out.
Game combined with monetization that doesn't feel too in your face and like you're getting too locked out of substantial, desirable content. Like there's a lot that this game gets right, and hopefully it's something that will be continued by developers in a way where it becomes an example of how to do a live service right. But only time will tell. Until we see more of what the future holds for this game, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Helldivers 2, whether you're still playing this game, and if not, why did you fall off, and what would it take for you to return to this title? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.
I think here's the problem, right? If I log in and I play Helldivers right now, it's going to be basically the same game that I probably played whenever I first played it. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. And I'm not going to say it's the same thing. It's not the same thing, but it's pretty close to the same thing. There's the video. Give it a like. That was good. Helldivers 2 was bound to have people stop playing it sooner or later. Yeah, I don't think people are emphasizing or putting enough emphasis or like importance on the amount of people talking about it on social media. Because that's what really makes games like blow up. Like look at Among Us. Among Us is never going to come back in the way that it existed in 2020. Now, obviously a lot of that is multiplied by COVID. However, there were other games that came out in 2020 that were still popular, right? And that's not necessarily at Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, well, that's a single-player game. But Among Us is a good example. Like Genshin, it's the same thing. Genshin is never going to come back and have the same popularity that it had because it's already happened. Like, people have already gotten super excited and super, you know, like, oh my God, it's this new crazy game. Like, wow, look at this. Like, Fall Guys. Look at the, thank you. Fall Guys is another perfect fucking example. Fall Guys will never be as popular as it was. Like, it's just never going to happen again. And that's the way that all of these games go. Elden Ring. Yeah, Elden Ring, the DLC is amazing, but it did not reach the numbers that the base game did because that's the way things go. PUBG, Jump King, Only Up. Yes, all of these games. Now, good, very well-maintained live service games do sometimes, hold the success. You're seeing Destiny 2, at least based off of Steam charts, Path of Exile, or another one. These are massive, super omega exceptions. And I think that one reason why Helldivers is never going to be able to keep that player base for like a long-term period of time is because there's nothing to work towards. There's nothing that I can't log on to that game and accomplish something. I can't do something. You know what I mean? Helldivers, yeah, it's a one-trick pony. Like, you can play the game in one way and that's it. Acheron beat the sales for the character even whenever the game came out. Yeah, but that's because Acheron was fucking broken. Like I don't think people understand how good that character is. That character is like, it's hard to even explain how good it is. It's like, imagine you're playing a turn-based game, but you can just kill the mob and not even go into battle. You just kill the mob off, like with outside of the turn-based system. It's like, I win, right? It's like, it's more than auto. You don't even do the combat. It's insane. That's called power creep. It's pretty normal in gachas. Well, what I'm saying is, like, it makes sense that that character is going to be more powerful. But the thing is that, how do you beat that? How do you do that again? Almost impossible. Turns the game into an action game? Yeah, exactly. Your presence kills enemies. Yeah, exactly. Monthly revenue drops tomorrow. Do you think Wuthering Waves is going to beat Honkai Star Rail and Genshin? I think Wuthering Waves probably will beat one of them, but probably not both. So yeah, you nerf it and release a OP character. They almost never nerf characters in gacha games. But yeah, I think this is what happens with all of these live service games almost that don't have like a serious progression system. People play them for a while, they enjoy them, and then they move on. That's just the way it is. I need to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.